Hello, and welcome to our speech and drama lesson 4 as part of the 8 Keys to Naturalised English Speech. I'm sorry I wasn't here last week. I was quite sick. So if you were tuning in, sorry about that. And if you're watching them in replay, I guess it doesn't matter. So anyway, if this is your first time watching, basically these are speech and drama lessons specifically aimed at English second language speakers. So speech and drama is a subject where we use literature and so poetry, prose, drama as a way of improving our speech and our speaking. And so it's a really fun way for ESL learners to practice their speech and also learn something about the literature of English, which is the language you'd be learning in this case. My name's Cara. If you haven't met me before, welcome. So we'll get straight into it. Again, if this is your first time, it could be worth going back over some of the previous lessons as well. Basically, we're working through a book each week, which is The Little Prince. So you'll see that popping up each time. So if what we do today interests you and you go, oh, I'd be interested to see how this started, then you can go back through the lessons. They're all numbered. Okay. First thing we talk about every week is warming up our voice. And the first part of that is to focus on our breathing. So we've done different breathing exercises each week. I want you to place your hands on the part of your body where your diaphragm is. It's sort of situated just below these lower ribs. So place your hands there. And as you breathe in and out, try and just be calm and focus on just this moment and focus on your breathing. Focus on the sensation in your body. Breathing exercises are actually really good just for mindfulness as well in that case, because we often don't think about the sensations of our body. So just breathing in and out and feel that part of your abdomen moving in and out as you breathe. Okay, next time you breathe out, we're going to breathe out on a sigh. Okay, so breathing in and out. In and out. Now, next time we breathe in, you keep breathing, I'll talk, but just keep breathing and feeling that sensation in your body. We're going to breathe out over a period of time that I'll count. So I'll count 1, 2, 3. We'll start with in for 3 and out for 3. And then each time the breathing out will take a little bit longer, okay? So breathing in for 3, 1, 2, 3, out, 1, 2, 3. Breathing in, 1, 2, 3, out, 1, 2, 3, 4. Breathing in, 1, 2, 3, out, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Breathing in, 1, 2, 3, out, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Breathing in, 1, 2, 3, out, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Breathing in, 1, 2, 3, out, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. We'll leave it at that for today for that particular exercise. So now let's take another big breath in and out on a sigh. So now we're going to start warming up our voice, which is produced by our vocal cords. And then we're going to hum. When we breathe out, we'll breathe out on a hum. And as you do so, we've done this in previous lessons, but a lot of these exercises you practice every day. It's the same as any exercise. If you were practicing to be a soccer player, you practice the same exercises over and over again to strengthen your muscles. It's the same thing. So don't kind of think, oh, I've done this before. If you're practicing the art of speech, you do this for years, you know. So we're going to breathe in as we did, and then breathe out on a hum. And as you do so, I want you to put your hands here on your face, on your forehead, on the top of your head. See if you can feel the vibrations which are produced by your voice. And as I've explained in previous lessons, the more vibrations you can feel and pick up, it means the more resonating cavities you're using and the richer your voice will be. So let's breathe in, out. Can you feel vibrations in some of those places? Often people find this one quite hard to feel. It takes a bit of practice. So if you can't, that's okay. Just come with practice. Let's do it again. Breathe in and out. One last time in, out. Now, if there's a place you can't feel, it can be interesting to play with the pitch, try higher or lower, see if you can find which resonance will help you to feel, which pitch will help you to feel that resonance. Never sort of push your voice lower or higher than is comfortable, especially at this point, we're just warming up our voice. So you don't want to be going or, or hurting your voice because that's not helpful, okay? So just comfortable pitches. All right, that's enough for our voice warm-ups today. We're going to go straight into our speech warm-ups. So this is where we're warming up our speech organs. Now, as I've said in previous lessons, when the voice is formed, it starts with the breath, then there's the vibration of the vocal cords, then the voice picks up volume and resonance from the resonating cavities, and then it's formed into words by the speech organs. And so that's what we're practicing with this tongue twister. Tongue twisters are very good for warming up the speech organs. Now I'm going to copy and paste this into the comments so you can follow along. Let me just do that. Okay. Great. So this is just a tongue twister. With this one, we're working on particular consonants, as you'll see. So read along with me. I'll start slowly and then we'll get a little bit faster, but try and read as I do, because the idea is that you can listen to how I say it as well, and that can help you know the right way to pronounce it. A tutor who tutored the flute tried to tutor two tutors to toot. Said the two to the tutor, "Is it easier to toot or to tutor two tutors to toot?" So as you can see, the difficulty here is going between tutor and tutor. And so it's training your mouth to distinguish between those two. If you are, because I know, as I said, this is aimed at English second language speakers. A tutor, if you haven't heard that word, is obviously, it's like a teacher who teaches one person. Right now I'm being a tutor, a speech and drama tutor. And tutor is not really a proper word, but it's being used in this tongue twister as someone who is tooting on a flute. That way, not that way. Flute's this way, isn't it? So they're calling that person a tutor, which is not really a proper word. So anyway, let's practice saying it again and we'll get a bit faster as we go. A tutor who tutored the flute tried to tutor two tutors to toot. Said the two to the tutor, "Is it easier to toot or to tutor two tutors to toot?" And again, a little faster. A tutor who tutored the flute tried to tutor two tutors to toot. Said the two to the tutor, "Is it easier to toot or to tutor two tutors to toot?" And one more time. A tutor who tutored the flute tried to tutor two tutors to toot. Said the two to the tutor, is it easier to toot or to tutor two tutors to toot? I hope that wasn't too annoying to try and say. And we're going to do one more voice warm up. And this is actually going to be from a Dr. Seuss book. Now, if you're part of our course, the 8 Keys to Naturalised English Speech, you'll know that I often use Dr. Seuss. Dr. Seuss is an amazing author, sadly passed away now, but his books are very popular. And he writes with a lot of rhymes and a lot of playing with words, which make them amazing to practice your speech. So I'm just going to copy a piece from Fox in Socks here, and I'm also going to copy the link to the PDF that I'm reading from, so you can look up the whole PDF. There we go. And I'm actually also going to take the book from right behind me here and read it and show you the pictures as we go. So you can see, because a lot of the time these books don't necessarily make sense without looking at the pictures. You'll see what I mean. So hopefully you can read that. Fox, socks, box, knocks. I'll stop at this point and say knocks is not a word, it's just this character here, but it's not actually a word that means anything else. Knocks in box, fox in socks. Knocks on fox, in socks, in box. Socks on knocks and knocks in box. Fox in socks, on box, on knocks. Now that's all I've copied there. As you can see, the book goes on and has some wonderful tongue twisters. If you're trying to practice your speech, and well, anyone trying to practice their speech, but ESL speakers, since that's who this is aimed at, I really recommend you get this book. It's amazing. It's full of incredible tongue twisters, which are very funny as well. And so that makes it fun. Okay, we're going to go over that again, and I'll show you the pictures as we go, and I'll try and turn the pages a bit faster. Fox, socks, box, knocks. Knocks in box, fox in socks. Knocks on fox, in socks, in box. Socks on knocks and knocks in box. Fox in socks and knock box on knocks. I made a mistake myself. It's hard to look back and forward. One more time. So what we're doing here, in case you're like, this is nonsense, we're practicing the consonants, because when you're speaking any language, obviously, it's really important to be able to pronounce it clearly. But often when we're learning another language, our mouths are not used to forming the sounds of that language. I'm trying to learn to speak Chinese. And so my mouth isn't used to forming some of the sounds in Chinese. And so I have to practice saying things that are difficult to say in order to train my speech organs in my mouth. So that's why we're doing this. In case you're going, this is nonsense verse. It's all about training the muscles. One more time. Fox, socks, box, knocks. Knocks in box, fox in socks. Knocks on fox, in socks, in box. Socks on knocks and knocks in box. Fox in socks, on box, on knocks. Okay, that's enough tongue twisters for today. But get that book, that's my recommendation. Now we're going to read part of a poem. So in these speech and drama lessons, we always use poetry and we always use prose. Now this poem is from one of my favourite authors, Lewis Carroll. Now, Lewis Carroll is very famous for writing Alice in Wonderland, which you may have heard of. You may have seen the movie. It's a Hollywood movie now, so that's quite famous. He also wrote other poems, and this one features in Alice in Wonderland. It's called The Walrus and the Carpenter. And a lot of our things we're doing today are quite absurd, which is something I love. So that's not surprising. So when we practice these poems, part of the reason is it's about the art of speaking, but also the art of speaking a poem specifically, because the poem is written with a certain form, and it's important to use that when you speak. I've explained in other lessons in more detail, but basically, often when there's no punctuation at the end of the line, we often hold the last sound and go on. We don't pause, because if we pause, you might be pausing in the middle of a sentence. Like if I'm speaking to you now and I stop like that, it's very strange, yeah? And that's what happens if you pause in the wrong place in the poetry. So it's all about keeping the rhythm, but also the sense of the poem. So that's why poetry is really great to practice. Well, one of the reasons, there are many. So I won't copy the actual text because it's a bit longer, but we're just going to read the first 5 stanzas. Next week we'll do the rest of them. Now, in poetry, a stanza is a verse. Every time there's a verse and there's a pause, that's a stanza, okay? So I'm just going across to my poem. So if you're following along, you could open this up in a tab so you can look at the text while I read it and just listen to my voice, perhaps. Also, when we do poetry, we always read the name of the poem and the poet at the start. So 5 stanzas from The Walrus and the Carpenter by Lewis Carroll. The sun was shining on the sea, shining with all his might. He did his very best to make the billows smooth and bright. And this was odd, because it was the middle of the night. I'm going to pause here for a second and just show you how I carried on those lines. So you can see the line, he did his very best to make the billows smooth and bright. You can see that that has to carry on to make sense. Same with because it was the middle of the night. It wouldn't make any sense if I said, because it was the middle of the night. That's not how you would speak it. So what I'm doing is I'm just holding that sound slightly, holding the vowel sound, so that I'm keeping the rhythm of the lines, but then I'm continuing on. So I'll go back and read that again, but that was just to illustrate the point I was making before. Okay. The sun was shining on the sea, shining with all his might. He did his very best to make the billows smooth and bright. And this was odd, because it was the middle of the night. The moon was shining sulkily, because she thought the sun had got no business to be there after the day was done. It's very rude of him, she said, to come and spoil the fun. The sea was wet as wet could be, the sands were dry as dry. You could not see a cloud, because no cloud was in the sky. No birds were flying overhead, there were no birds to fly. The walrus and the carpenter were walking close at hand. They wept like anything to see such quantities of sand. If this were only cleared away, they said, it would be grand. If 7 maids with 7 mops swept it for half a year, do you suppose, the walrus said, that they could get it clear? I doubt it, said the carpenter, and shed a bitter tear. That's all we're going to read for now. So, in case you're not following what's going on in this poem, Lewis Carroll is talking about the beach basically, but it's all very absurd because the sun is shining in the middle of the night, for one. The moon is upset because the sun is shining in the middle of the night. There are no clouds and there are no birds, which already sets us up for a bit of an abnormal and absurd world. And then we have 2 characters, the walrus and the carpenter, and they're walking along and crying because there is so much sand, which is also absurd because it's the beach. There's always sand at the beach. And then they're talking about how could it be cleared up, which of course it can't. So that's basically what's going on in these poems. So I'm going to read that again. If you didn't the first time, read along with me at the same time and practice the timing, practice the way the words are pronounced, practice the way that the poem is read. Okay, let's go again. So the first 5 stanzas from The Walrus and the Carpenter by Lewis Carroll. The sun was shining on the sea, shining with all his might. He did his very best to make the billows smooth and bright. And this was odd, because it was the middle of the night. The moon was shining sulkily, because she thought the sun had got no business to be there after the day was done. It's very rude of him, she said, to come and spoil the fun. The sea was wet as wet could be. The sands were dry as dry. You could not see a cloud because no cloud was in the sky. No birds were flying overhead. There were no birds to fly. The walrus and the carpenter were walking close at hand. They wept like anything to see such quantities of sand. If this were only cleared away, they said, it would be grand. If 7 maids with 7 mops swept it for half a year, do you suppose, the walrus said, that they could get it clear? I doubt it, said the carpenter, and shed a bitter tear. All right, that's the end of The Walrus and the Carpenter for today. Next week, we'll read the next part of the poem. But yes, it's quite long, so we won't do it all today. And the last thing we'll read for today is from The Little Prince, which is the book we've been reading. And we've done the first chapter, so we're up to the start of chapter 2. This is a beautiful book. It's actually French literature originally, written by a Frenchman, but it's been translated into English and many, many languages. Very famous book. So again, I very thoroughly recommend that you buy this book and read it because it's beautiful. It's one of my favorite books in the world, actually. So we're going to read, I'll share you the PDF link that I'm reading from. And then I'll tell you and we are reading from page 6 of the book, chapter 2. I'll just write that down here in the comments. And we're not going to read the full chapter, but we'll read some of it. Okay? So I won't describe everything that's happened up till now because it'll take a while. But basically, a man who is the author is talking about how, as a child, he dreamed of being an artist, but he drew pictures and none of the adults understood. And to this day, he's now an adult in the book. And so he associates with adults, but he still feels that they don't understand him. And maybe this is why I love this book, because perhaps a lot of us feel this way, that we have our kind of inner child, I suppose, which lives on, and that the adults around us don't understand. I know I feel like that a lot of the time, and very possibly you do too. I think many people must do, which is why this book is so popular. So this is where he's talking about how he lived his life as an adult. So an excerpt from The Little Prince by Antoine de Saint-Exupéry, chapter 2. So I lived my life alone, without anyone that I could really talk to, until I had an accident with my plane in the desert of Sahara 6 years ago. Something was broken in my engine. And as I had with me neither a mechanic nor any passengers, I set myself to attempt the difficult repairs all alone. It was a question of life or death for me. I had scarcely enough drinking water to last a week. The first night, then, I went to sleep on the sand, 1,000 miles from any human habitation. I was more isolated than a shipwrecked sailor on a raft in the middle of the ocean. Thus, you can imagine my amazement at sunrise, when I was awakened by an odd little voice. It said, "If you please, draw me a sheep." What? Draw me a sheep. I jumped to my feet, completely thunderstruck. I blinked my eyes hard. I looked carefully all around me, and I saw a most extraordinary small person who stood there examining me with great seriousness. Here you may see the best portrait that later I was able to make of him, but my drawing is certainly very much less charming than its model. That, however, is not my fault. The grown-ups discouraged me in my painter's career when I was 6 years old, and I never learned to draw anything except boas from the outside and boas from the inside. Now I stared at this sudden apparition with my eyes fairly starting out of my head in astonishment. Remember, I had crashed in the desert 1,000 miles from any inhabited region, and yet my little man seemed neither to be straying uncertainly among the sands, nor to be fainting from fatigue or hunger or thirst or fear. Nothing about him gave any suggestion of a child lost in the middle of the desert, 1,000 miles from any human habitation. When at last I was able to speak, I said to him, "But what are you doing here?" And in answer, he repeated very slowly, as if he was speaking of a matter of great consequence, "If you please, draw me a sheep." That is all we're going to read from the book today. I won't read it again because we're going to run out of time. But if you're following along later, you can obviously replay me reading it and practice along for the second time. So again, it's really valuable for people. I mean, I studied speech and drama as a native English speaker throughout my teenage years. So it's useful for people who are native English speakers, but especially if you're an English second language speaker, it's really useful to hear people reading in the language you're studying, to learn the natural speech patterns and to be able to copy them. So that's what I recommend you do. And yes, so we're almost at the end. I'll be back next week. I should continue to be well, hopefully, and not be sick. So this is, if you are interested in working more on your pronunciation specifically, I run a course called the 8 Keys to Naturalized English Speech, which you can subscribe to. The first month is actually a free trial. You can try it out and see if you like it. And after that, it's only $12 a month, and you can pull out at any time if you don't like it. But basically, we work very specifically on pronunciation. So this, we focus more on literature. In that, we focus on the sounds that you're saying and specific ways that that often English second language speakers need to improve their speech in order to sound more like native speakers. But you can follow the link on our YouTube channel. There's a link to our website if you're interested. If not, either way, I'll see you back here next week on our YouTube channel for the speech and drama lesson. And very soon we'll actually be offering these on Youku as well, so that they'll be available in China. So I'll see you either on YouTube or Youku, whichever platform you're watching this on. Okay, have a lovely week. Thanks for listening. Bye-bye.